So around a year ago, the word MCP was introduced by Anthropic. And to me, I have a hard time really understanding what is the exact use case of this MCP. Now, my main criticism on this is that it struggled between that classic agent is flexible but hallucinate versus hard-coded software is rigid but reliable kind of factor. My main concern is that if I can build an MCP server and I know exactly what tool calls are inside it, I already kind of have enough clarity on the whole workflow that I don't really need AI agents flexibility to help me out, and I would much better off benefiting from the reliable hard-coded software. Now, what I've missed at that time is that the optimal use case for MCP is actually not for internal user, but for external user. And here's my recent experience that really got me to this point. So, like a lot of software developer, I had been switching my coding workflow from hand-coded software to more like vibe coding and then reviewing the AI's output. Now, one thing that has always been quite hard for me to do with AI is that the DevOps process. Now, DevOps involve a lot of tedious stuff, and it can include like domain name setup, DNS setup, SSL certificate, backend server, frontend server, database. And then if you want to be really like professional and stuff, you might want to set up a production and a staging environment. Now, it's a lot of configuration, and each of these configuration usually is handled by a different vendor or service provider. The problem with this setup is that each vendor has their own UI, and learning how to use their UI is kind of like a pain on the backside, and reading through their documentation is not the most pleasant experience. What I'm finding is that recently I've been using this hosting platform that's called Railway, and it's offering MCP server. Now, Railway by itself can handle like backend server, front-end database, and all that, but it's really not about this service, but it's more about MCP. I've connected my cursor agent with that MCP server from Railway, and then what I find is that now I can really easily like tell the agent that I want to set up my infrastructure in a certain way, and then it goes to the MCP server of Railway and help me set up the backend, the front end, database, bucket, and volume. And then the best part is that having the environment value for each of them to point at the right place, like pointing the backend to the database and the volumes, pointing the front end to the backend, stuff like that. It was not difficult, but it was like kind of tedious. And when I have to do it with multiple vendors, like and learning their UIs and stuff like that, it was really painful. Now, from this experience, I think I finally clicked it and understand what is the optimal use case to create an MCP server. It's actually not for internal user, but for external user who are not a frequent user of your system, but sometimes they need to come in and use some like customized setup or configuration. Now, in my situation, let's pretend if I am an internal engineer in Railway, and I know exactly what I want to do with the software and stuff like that. So I'm actually better off using hard-coded software to build out the workflow for the reliability and predictability. But as an external user who comes to Railway once every 4 to 6 months to maybe configure a new project and stuff like that, it's simply not worth the time for me to go through the documentation or spend the time to like really learn this whole service. It's like a really small part of my whole development cycle, and spending that time feels kind of bad. But with an MCP, now I can just ask my agent to connect to the MCP of Railway, and then it will go and explore a Railway like API and then do everything by itself. Now, there's a chance of hallucination, I agree, and there's also like the token cost of using AI. But the cost for me to do this is just like so much time saved it, and I'm not doing it that often, that it brings a tremendous value to me in terms of the reduced friction of using the service provider's service. And I think this reduced friction will continue to like encourage me to keep using this hosting provider in the near future. And I think it really like brings out the next point in regards to like the future of software development, or maybe in terms of just business by itself. Because like as we're seeing from the news that more and more people are using agent to help with their daily flow, like Claude Code are now being adopted by a lot of people outside of the programming world. I think we are moving towards a world where all the interface is going to collide into the AI agent. So instead of having to like learn every new online store's interface and then try to click through stuff, or learn through a new service provider's website or landing page, now everyone will likely converge to like talking to the agent and let agent do that translation between the customer's need to the service provider. And I think MCP is going to be like a really key part in this whole thing. So if you're a business and you can create an MCP, I think you'll be in a much better position, maybe down in like 1 year or 2, where people are actually start to mass adopt agent so that their agent can communicate with your service like in a very frictionless way. But that's pretty much it. I don't really know how to go from here. If you have anything you want to say, leave it in the comment section. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one.